Welcome to the Rural Pastor Podcast with your host, Pastor Andy Addis.
You plant the seeds in the ground, though the fields have long been brown. But Lord, when will your harvest come in? You're giving all you've got to give in the place where you've been sent. But will this labor make much difference in the end? Will no one ever know? Sometimes you feel so all alone. Like the prophet Jeremiah, you may be the one to go to the dying and the broken with a message of hope. To that church on the corner of that forgotten little town, with a room of empty pews where his love can still be found. You may never know of all the seeds you sow, but it just takes one willing soul to make him known.
All right, welcome to another season of the Rural Pastor Podcast. We are so glad to have you here. My name is Andy Addis, and I'm joined with our co-host, Danny Payne. How you doing, Danny?
Man, I am awesome, Andy. It's so good to hear your voice again. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, we took a little break over the summer. Not necessarily an intended break, but once we had a couple weeks off, we said, you know what, let's just call this a season. And we'll start again.
Well put.
And so now we're starting a new season, and at the time of the release of this here in early August, we are currently in hell in Kansas. Isn't that right? It's hot.
We are. I call it a blast furnace. You just open the door and let the heat. You can bake without even having an oven.
Well, you asked me, you said, is it 140 where you're at? Because we're in two places. You're in the big city of Topeka, and I'm in Hutchinson, Kansas. And as we're recording this, 140 is a little excessive, but we are seeing triple digits for the next few days. So it's warm. Probably warm where they're listening as well, right?
Yeah, both of us love serving in Salina, Kansas. And so something about Salina Webster Conference Center can be really hot, more than any other place.
Yeah, that's where we do camp, and
Kansas.
It's a test of faith every time we go. That's right. Well, we are so thankful for you to be joining us, and appreciate you giving us a little bit of a break, because it was an incredible summer for each of us. So here's what I want to do before we jump into our topic, and I kind of tell you where we're going for the next few editions of the Rural Pastor Podcast. And by the way, it does feel good to be back. It is so good to be talking to the rural posse out there, that and all the guys that we want to connect with. But as we do this, let's just talk about this. Let's do a brief introduction of who you are and kind of what you do, and then a couple highlights from the summer. I'll go first to give you some time to think about it. But my name is Andy Addis. I have the privilege of running the Rural Pastor Podcast, but I do that as the rural director for the North American Mission Board. I'm also the lead pastor for a rural multi-site church, and I love also working for our two-state convention as the Heart Renewal and Evangelism Director. And if I could give a couple highlights from the summer, Here's what took place. Number one, I got to help teach at a youth camp this summer with my youngest son. We got to be on the same stage doing the same work in the same week as, I've been doing this for years. He's been attending and doing worship for years. For him to get a stab at that's been wonderful. So it was great to share the stage with Nathan and watch him develop. But then my oldest son, he had to trump everything. Just 3 weeks ago today, he gave us our very first grandbaby, Wilhelm Andrew Addis. And I'm sure it wouldn't take you very much digging on my social media to find a picture of him, but it's been wonderful.
So my question is, do you guys have to share, do you get clocks for how long you get to hold the grandchild? You and Kathy have to share time?
We're pretty good at sharing, but I let her know when she's hogging. I do. and I get a hold of that boy. Yeah, I love it. We're very blessed in that our grandbaby and his parents live 9 blocks from us. So we get to see him all the time, which is great. So Danny, introduce yourself, what you do, and maybe a couple highlights from the summer for you.
Well, my name is Danny Payne. I am the Director of Missions for Flint Hills Association, which is kind of the northeast corridor of Kansas. I kind of hug the Kansas City line, go up to the Nebraska border, all the way south to kind of Iola, Kansas. My association that I serve is pretty unique because we go from Topeka and Lawrence, where you're pretty, you got just cities, and then you jump out urban super fast, or rural, excuse me. And so I can get really rural really fast. And so I get the best of both worlds, and I get to serve kind of all those. We have about 50 churches I serve. I was pastoring before. A highlight for me this summer is I'm really excited. We've got a church we're planting in Holton, Kansas. And that pastor is about to go through the training next month. And so I'm super excited to see that kind of happen. And I am just encouraged to see he uprooted, moved his family before he went through assessments through NAM. And I'm like, man, that boy is serious about doing what God's asked him to do. And so we're very excited about that. So we get to see that up close and personal next month. And like you, got to go out to camp and got to see a lot of our churches, seeing what God was doing, some great things out at summer camp this year. So it's such a blessing to be around. Andy and I have been around part of Kansas, Nebraska for a better part of our lives. So I am eternally grateful for all the relationships that have been forged
absolutely,
through student ministry and pastoring and sharing ministry together.
100%. And we see that coalescing at these events like that where we come together. So tell us a little bit about Holton, Kansas. And if you can, share us the pastor's name. I'm sure many of us would love to pray for this guy coming on the field.
His name is Matt. And he is out of a church here in town, actually a friend of ours, Jeremy Lightop's church at Maranatha. And we cast a vision for Holton, Kansas a couple years back when I first started into this role. And Matt has started driving up from Topeka and has got a Bible study going, and that Bible study started to grow. And we've been working with him, and there are people up there, as well as we actually had families move up there to work at the hospital and got jobs up there. And so we've just seen God kind of orchestrate this where it's really funny and really exciting. Andy, they've got almost as many kids as they do adults in these early stages right now. And so we're very excited. We think that they will launch later this fall. And so
how exciting
we're very excited about, oh my goodness. To be on this end of it at the very infancy of it, and seeing him, he's going to go through assessments, he and his wife, and their kiddos are excited. I got to say, the other cool part is watching Maranatha with Jeremy and their church are so excited about being a part of something like this.
Kind of a supportive and sending church. Yeah.
They are. And so I love that I get to see that too.
Well, in listening to your story, this is the way it's being done right, because the former model, Vance Pittman from Send Network at NAM, really does a great job of outlining this, where he says that the former model had been that we go in and we start a church service, and then we hope to disciple some Christians that were mad from other churches that came to our gathering, and then they'll go out and evangelize. Where the Pauline model out of the book of Acts is exactly the opposite. You go into the community and you start small by evangelizing and sharing the story. You make some disciples, and then you become a church. And boy, it sounds that's exactly what they're doing, going into the community even before they have the green light, and just starting Bible studies, loving on people. I just love it. That's so exciting. And if you're in this game at all, and it's not a game, but if you know what I mean, if you're in this game at all, that's the way to do it. Not to say start small to go big, to start with evangelism, to start with loving people relationally on the ground. Discipleship then builds a church. You don't start with a church. That's not the New Testament model. So it's exciting.
Yeah, they had a thing here. We got pictures about 3 weeks ago where they did their first baptism.
Oh,
and so we're just
awesome.
So encouraged by that.
Wait, you can do a baptism without a church? What are you saying?
I'm telling you, Andy, this is awesomeness.
How are you going to put that on an ACP report? How are you going to do that?
Good word.
It's really good. That's so exciting. So great. We'll pray for Matt, you said, with the new church plant starting in Holton, Kansas, and all over. Go ahead and share with us. If you got to this podcast via some social media post, please go ahead. If you're in the church planting world or replanting world, put your name and your location in the comments, and we'll just put you on the prayer list. We're going to start praying for all of the warriors who are doing this in rural America. Okay, speaking of rural America, it has been a couple of years since we started this podcast, and at the very beginning, we outlined what we called the big three. And since it's been a couple years, I want to begin this new season by once again outlining what we call the big three, which are three dominant needs that we see in almost every rural work. And those three needs are low resources, dealing with vocational identity, and isolation. So podcast 1, 2, and 3 in this new series, we're going to tackle each of these. And today we're going to start with the first one on the list, which is low resources. So let me lay out a little bit of a game plan here, Danny, and then you're dealing with so many churches. I mean, is the biggest city that you're in is Topeka. It's like 130,000. But then what is the smallest community that you're in?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Let me think here for a second.
You think there, Cross Point, where we're at, our largest church is in a community of about 50,000, and our smallest church is in a community of just a handful of a few hundred. And so we have everything in between there as well.
Eskridge, Kansas, about 600.
About 600. So as we look at these, we're going to talk about it from the perspective of a lot of size demographics in town. Because you say, well, I thought you said you were rural. Here's the problem. When somebody says I'm rural, we always try and say, well, I'm smaller than you are. You know, our town has less than you have. And rurality is a mentality. As a matter of fact, in the 5th or 6th episode of this season, we're going to define rurality as a mentality. That'll be fun. But whatever size culture you come from, here are the three big obstacles: low resources, vocational identity, and isolation. Let's start with low resources. And so what I mean by that is two things: both church poor and community poor. Now, when I say church poor, very often rural churches struggle with finances. As a matter of fact, because it's a financial struggle, they are literally not doing the mission of the church. They are trying to keep the lights on in the church building. That we often have mission drift because there are such low resources in the church that it becomes not a thriving mentality, but a survival mentality. And that's not to be blamed. That's not to throw stones. When you're in an emergency situation, you tend to change your priorities to try and get some stuff fixed. But let me ask you a question. You've seen this time and time again. When a church focuses on their finances instead of their vision, it almost never helps their finances. But when a church focuses on their vision, then the finances seem to take care of themselves. Is that something that you've seen reproduced as truth?
Totally true. Churches that are focused on hunkering down and protecting what they've got, instead of saying, okay, what can we do to reach and to think differently? They hold on, and they think, oh, if we can pay the pastor. It's funny you say this, because I met with a pastor this morning. If your bar is, I can pay the pastor, people are showing up, and we can pay our bills, and that's enough. The bar's too low.
If that's the win, that's not a win. Yeah,
that's the win, and that's not the win. That eventually something's going to happen. And I think when we start to hunker down, we actually reverse. We just become very closed, and we're just like, let's just protect what we've got, instead of, okay, God, we need to take some steps here.
Well, and when you focus on the finances as opposed to the vision, and the vision being the Great Commission as our vision, right? Reach the whole world, right, starting in your Jerusalem, Acts 1:8, which is your hometown. This is why I believe that focusing on that need doesn't do it, because people don't give to need, but people do give to vision. And if they see that there is a vibrant hope of the gospel, and we've got a plan for reaching the community, and we may not be able to do it like all them big churches in the big city, but right here, God is blessing what we're doing, and we have a plan to be salt and light in this place. Resources begin to flow through God's people when God's work is being done by those people.
You know, Andy, you and I both know that people give to something that is exciting to give to. Mm-hmm. And if you give a compelling vision for your community, regardless of its size, at least in my experience, people are like, yeah, where do I jump in?
That's right.
Where's they'll jump in full throttle if they think that the vision is compelling enough and worthy. Like, if you think that reaching people is serious business, I'm gonna dive into this.
Yeah.
And they get excited about that, and it's such an exciting thing when people are excited about reaching people. Mm-hmm. It's contagious.
And that's where you move from surviving to thriving. Nobody wants to give to a light bill, but they want to give to a church who'll be the light in the darkness. And so that's where we are. Here's another version of low resources. People. They look around and go, well, it's just It's just 6 of us here today. Yeah, you know how you feel like your church poor with regard to people is when during the middle of summer you look around and during the announcements you go, well, if so-and-so family was here and another family, they're at the lake this weekend and somebody else had a ball tournament, we'd be a lot stronger today. But just remember, they're out doing that. And when you start counting the absences publicly, that's when you know that you're feeling the weight of feeling low resources with regard to people. And the reality of a church in rural places is that we're always going to look at the number of people in the pews and the seats around the circle, wherever we are, and wish we had more. But that kind of thinking always makes you think, once again, in that need mentality instead of the vision mentality. And what is it that God has for these people who are here today? So low numbers doesn't necessarily mean a lack of strength. When Jesus started and he released his into mission, it was only 11 guys, because remember, one got cut from the team. It was only 11 guys until they found that replacement. And these 12 guys turned the world upside down. And so the focusing on people, focusing on numbers like that, numbers do not equal greatness. No matter what you've been taught or what's ingrained, we can't get in that mentality, because the reality is that if your mentality is that we got to have big numbers, you're going to miss the fact that God's going to start with just the right numbers who are going to be the leaders and movers and shakers of what is to come.
When I was a youth pastor, Andy, I had a painful lesson taught to me by a middle school girl. We were doing an event at a church, and I was expecting and hoping for big numbers, and it went off well. It was a good event, but we didn't have the numbers that I really thought we should have. And I remember I was in a follow-up meeting with our leaders, and then I had students as part of the leadership team. And I'll never forget this gal, a middle school girl, her name was Melanie, and she said, I was belly aching about all who weren't there.
Yeah.
Because I was doing what you just said a second ago. I was naming off all these kids that, why weren't they there? But, went on and on and on. And she finally looked at me and she said, Danny, couldn't you have been happy for the ones who were there?
Oh.
And I was like,
wisdom from the mouth of babes. Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're looking around like, well, we'll get around to doing all these things when we get the numbers up. Well, why don't you, like you just said, Andy, why don't we dance with what we got and let's build with that?
Amen.
Let's build with what we got instead of waiting for what might show up, because those people are with you now, and let's go.
Amen. Although, as a Southern Baptist, I cannot follow your dancing analogy, but we can have a foot function with those who have come this weekend.
Tap your feet aggressively. There you go.
That's it. One more and this is just perspective. The list could go on and on, but we feel the sting of low resources in rural church work, sometimes with regard to our facilities. And our facilities are both sometimes a blessing and a curse, because we have to keep them up. They become an albatross around our neck when it comes to that air conditioner that doesn't work. We can't pay for it, so now we're all meeting in the fellowship hall because we can at least air condition that room. But then we also sometimes we start to grow, and they become a cage for us that we can't do anymore because we've reached our limits. I remember when we first came to Westbrook, and the church had been in its heyday, reaching hundreds of people, but they were just a handful of people back in 2002, and we had like 90 people come to our church meeting, and there were 137 in Sunday school, so more in Sunday school than there were in church. A year later, we were running like 300 plus in church and 137 in Sunday school. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, the Sunday school was full. The building had limited what we can do. So we can sometimes find ourselves feeling like we have low resources, whether it's a building that's siphoning off our money and our time and our energy, or it's a building that's limiting us in what we can do. It's a no-win. You can't build your ministry around a building, and your ministry can't be thought of as the building. A building focus is the wrong focus for a church. Amen?
Amen. You think about that old movie from a Field of Dreams, Build It and They'll Come. And I think there was a lot of churches that did that. They were like, well, if we build a new building, we build a multi-purpose, and those things, none of those are bad. But if you build with that idea that that's going to get them in, there was that old adage, what you win them with is what you win them to. Oh. If you think this is what you're going to win them with, then that's it. that's not enough. That's a nice thing, but I think churches who've sold themselves on some sort of fancy building or keeping that up as some sort of, I wouldn't say a sacred cow for some of them.
Yeah.
And like, that's at the expense of the gospel. And I mean, I was a youth guy for most of my life, so people would always chafe if the building got damaged. The first thing they do was come see me.
Because it was obviously a
something-
student who did that, right?
Oh, of course. That food stain never could have happened at another meeting, but that's another story for another day.
Okay, so low resources in the church. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but the big ones, money. If we let money be the driving force, it will always cloud our vision. Vision first, and the money will come. People, don't bemoan the fact that you don't have more people, but embrace the fact that you have what God gave you, and that is the crew that God's going to use to change your community. And when it comes to facilities, man, whether it's that you need them or that you need to be free of them, make sure that your ministry isn't facility-based ministry, that your ministry is about people, that you are doing your best to be good stewards of what you've been given for certain, but never get out of the shackles of buildings, whether it's that you need more or that you wish you didn't have what you had, either one of those. All those low resources in the church. Now, when I said there's two sides to this, church poor, and then there's also community poor. We're not going to take time to go through each one of these, but let me give you some examples. Rural communities struggle with the fact that they're community poor, meaning they don't have shopping. They have to drive someplace. I was recently in Helena, Montana, working with some rural guys, and the eastern half of the state of Montana, they said, is bigger than 40 of the other states in the United States. And just in eastern Montana, there are 94,000 people. I mean, that's a very few people spread out over a big area. And they said that they share a Walmart that's about a 3-hour trip for most people. That's called shopping poor, right? If you have to drive 3 hours to get to Walmart, God bless you, my friends.
Wow.
So when it comes to communities, they may feel poor because they don't have those retail opportunities. There's another one, medical. I think one of the reasons Hutchinson, our community, has done so well is we're a smaller community, but we have the hospital for several areas around us because they are hospital poor. They're medical poor. People have to drive to Hutch to go see their doctor on a regular basis. And then lifestyle poor, meaning if you feel like you're in a rural community that's lifestyle poor, if they go, ain't nothing to do here, right? You can never find anything to do here. So I just want to ask you this. We understand church poor, but rural churches also have to deal with the fact that their people, while they may have some hometown pride, secretly or sometimes publicly bemoan the fact that they feel community poor, whether it's shopping or medical services or even lifestyle opportunities. And I think that that's a real factor, especially in trying to get new young families to be a part of a community and part of a church.
Oh, totally true. I was thinking about I told you were asking about the smallest town that I'm aware of in Eskridge. Eskridge, Kansas is a town of 600. That population hasn't changed since the early 60s.
Wow.
It's static, and everybody that lives there are either farmers or they simply just commute out to do everything. There is one gas station in town. There's not even a Dollar General there. And so it's 30 minutes, and I realize it's not 3 hours, but for them, it's very much what you're describing. There's you've got a park. I think there's a public pool, and that's about it.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Danny, I cut you off.
Nope.
So
go ahead.
When we see these things, we don't deny them. We don't stick our head in the sand like an ostrich and go, no, this community's great. Well, the community is lacking some things. So what do we do when you're church poor and community poor in rural ministry? Here's the suggestion. We need to see everything as an opportunity mindset. The word opportune actually comes from a Latin word that meant a certain kind of wind, and it was the wind that blew you toward the port. And so these obstacles actually become opportunities if a church will think creatively about them. So let me give you a couple examples. If you're in a shopping poor kind of community and everything is half an hour away or 40 minutes away, but you have a church van, man, what great fellowship to say, hey, we're gonna do a town run every second Saturday. And we just want to pick you up. And if you're a part of this community, we'll take you there and we'll bring you back and make a shopping excursion for folks. Or you bring in, there are these incredible home businesses. Let your fellowship hall every Saturday be that place where you have a bazaar and you become that place for them. And another way to look at this is there's something called the third place. I have a third place. It's a coffee shop in town. My first place is home. My second place is work. But my third place, if you don't find me at either of those two places, there's a good chance I got headphones on. I'm working on something at this coffee shop. Well, there aren't coffee shops in a lot of these towns, but there is a cafe that you could create in a fellowship hall where 3 or 4 days a week in the evenings, you open it up to anybody, free coffee and free Wi-Fi. We'd love for you to just be here. And use that lack of resources as an opportunity mindset. It's really to open doors to everything. So I'm just giving a couple ideas, and here's what I want you to comment on. I think when a church recognizes that they have low resources and their community has low resources, then they need to see the opportunity mindset by 3 things: be creative, be resourceful, and be a resource. If you do these things, then you're actually taking the negatives of the community and turning them into positives for your church. What are your thoughts, Danny? Completely accurate. I mean, if you think of a church grabs the opportunity to say, let's not look at what we can't do, let's look at what we can do. And it might be one thing that would be helpful to the community and that people see that you genuinely care about the community. I was thinking about Eskridge in particular. They do a food pantry that meets the needs of community people, and it's just a simple thing. And it was one of those things that they said, we have low resources. Well, let's do something about that. And they got connected with harvesters, and they get food brought in, and they meet needs on a monthly basis. And it's not, they don't feed everybody in town, but they're doing their part on a Amen.
I think a very helpful thing.
And you take the lack and you turn it into a thrive. You take the need and you turn it into an opportunity. I absolutely love this. Let me give you an idea. Mark Clifton, a friend of the Rural Pastor podcast here, he said he loves this idea, and so I'm going to push it for him. What if there was just one of those rooms in the church, because the church isn't using all the Sunday school rooms that it used to, and you could actually plummet with some guys on a work day and put 3 washing machines and 3 dryers in there. And then you have Saturday morning washer dryer days for people in the community, because there's no laundromat and there's needs in the community. And while they're there, you play with the kids and you get a chance to love on these folks. And that while their clothes are washing and their clothes are drying, you have a captive audience to share the gospel. I love ideas like that. And that's the church being resourceful and being a resource as they're creative. So lots of ways we can do this. Amen.
I'm just thinking, listening to you, like in a rural church setting, get medical professionals to come in and do sports physicals at your school. They've got to go get them.
Great idea.
I mean, and if they've got to drive someplace, get medical people to come in and do those. That's low hanging fruit. That's easy to do, and you're meeting a need that they're going to get done somewhere. And maybe they're discounted or free, depending on how you do that. And I've actually seen churches do that.
That's right. And if you say, "Where's a list of this?" I would love to find a list of this. There is no list of this that I'm aware of. But if you're a pastor or minister in a rural community and you're driving because you don't have those resources where you're at, put that on the list, because whatever you're needing, those people are needing as well. So this is the first of the big 3 as we launch into our newest season here. As we're looking at what's going on, I want to challenge you all. Pastors, low resources are a reality, but we can turn those needs into opportunities. As Danny and I share with you at the beginning here, be thinking creatively, and let's see what God can do in and amongst our people. It's a real opportunity to be in these rural places and a special calling. May God bless you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon on the Rural Pastor Podcast.
Like the prophet Jeremiah, you may be the one to go to the dying and the broken with a message of hope. To that church on the corner of that forgotten little town, with a room of empty pews where his love can still be found. You may never know of all the seeds you sow, but it just takes one willing soul to make Him known.
Thank you for joining us on the Rural Pastor Podcast. Special thanks to Chosen Road for our incredible theme music and to 180 Digital for their corporate sponsorship and making all the technical things possible. Rural Church Leader, we want to remind you that your work is important, that you are important, and that you are not alone. See you again soon for another edition of the Rural Pastor Podcast.